Hello folks, so we haven't touched on Khazan for a good week or so, and there honestly hasn't been much development since we last did, but I thought it might be worth trying to throw out at least one Khazan video a week, just to keep the fire burning to some extent, and to try and remain very much within the all-knowing position I have for all things Khazan. So, today we're starting off with the biggest chunk of news we currently have, which would be that the pre-order and deluxe edition rewards for Khazan do have a known exploit, in which players can manipulate the game into believing they have these rewards. I'd immediately begin by saying I'll not be sharing any specifics to this exploit or where you can find it, but I've watched the video and read the comments confirming it works, so I've no doubt that this is an actual current exploit. I was made aware of this through the official Discord, and I can confirm the devs will very much be aware of this by now too. So, if you are so inclined as to track this exploit down and use it, just be advised that it will likely be traceable and linked to your Steam account, so it would be very wise to just ignore this exploit altogether. As for what it means for those who did pre-order the game and or purchase the deluxe edition, I can understand why some of us would feel disgruntled about this. However, I'd hardly assume Neeple are too happy about this either. As I've said a few times before, Khazan did not meet internal sales expectations. Overall, it's a very solid and enjoyable experience that the devs have worked tirelessly to improve over the past 4 or so months, and I don't agree with the game being exploited to any extent. This isn't a bad publisher or a development team that has tried to exploit their player base in any way, and instead they have operated the exact opposite by being very forthcoming, transparent, and clearly dedicated. Albeit things have gone very quiet just recently, and we really don't know what's on the horizon for Khazan or Neeple in general, but the fact does still very much remain that Neeple have set a very good example of just how developers can communicate with their player base, if they so choose to. Speaking of which, to nutshell our current situation, Khazan released roughly 4 or so months ago. We had 3 months of solid updates landing roughly every 2 weeks, and hotfixes every week. These included literally hundreds of bugs, performance, and general bug fixes, whilst including tons of quality of life, additional difficulties, 2 new boss rush modes, a female character model for Khazan, as well as a bunch of core changes to armor sets and skill trees, which gave builds much more versatility. And then finally, the most recent update included much wanted weapon scaling changes, as well as additional options to improve the core grade of weapons, which I am currently working on a video for. A little bit late, I know, but it's in the works nonetheless. The original stream of updates were all mostly presented by Commander-in-Chief Sir Jun-Ho Lee himself, which would be the lead developer over at Neeple. These trailed off with time, and for the past 2 or 3 updates, they've just been presented by the development team in general. My current theories are Neeple are either going back to the drawing board after Khazan failed their expectations, and where they go from here could be anyone's guess, or they could be doubling down on Khazan more than before, and this has required them to take a step back from the community and focus more internally on the actual game itself. I do of course hope it is the latter, and that we do hear some good news in the near future, giving us some details as to where things go from here and what we can expect. However, it is currently anyone's guess right now. We have nothing that points us more in either direction, and despite Khazan being a fantastic game and mostly being loved by all who have played it, it still failed where the important numbers are concerned, and this does leave us in very uncertain territory to say the least. As I've said many times before, regardless of Khazan's fate, we will be following along to the very end, whether it be for better or for worse, so do stay tuned right here for all future Khazan developments, and fingers crossed it is good news we receive next, and not the opposite. I don't doubt that we will continue to see bug fixes, as the feedback section within the Khazan Discord is constantly being updated with new bugs and issues that players are discovering, albeit the vast majority of these are very minor and don't impact the game very much, but it's likely these will continue to be ironed out with time, so regardless of the future, we can all expect bug fixes and the like as time does move forward. Now, something I wanted to revisit now that some time has passed would be the negative review bombing that Khazan received a month or so ago. At that time, it took this blow to its review score, and we wouldn't know at the time how long this would persist. But as it turns out, this impacted 1 full week where the negative reviews outweighed the positive. However, since then, it has been back to its usual positive majority, with the negatives trailing off more and more with time, which would be deservedly so. Khazan did not deserve half of the negative reviews it received for the inclusion of female Khazan, or with the exclusivity with the Pathfinder pack, and it's nice to see that no real damage was actually done here. Now, as for the more recent updates we've had, the one update we covered a week or so ago did include the weapon scaling and weapon grade changes, which has been relatively well received by the player base. However, an unintended exploit did reveal itself with this update, essentially allowing players to gain an infinite amount of gold by abusing the convert scaling option. This has since been patched, and as far as I know, can no longer be exploited in the same way, but it's nice to know that the player base is still going strong enough to discover and share exploits with one another. Since the update, we've had 2 little hotfixes which have done as follows. Fixed an issue where crash would occur when the character died due to certain objects in Polimion. Fixed an issue where an intermittent crash would occur when retrying Ultimate Challenge mode with the Golden Honor HUD enabled, fixed an issue where health and stamina gauges were displayed in the crevice regardless of HUD settings, fixed an intermittent issue where the select button would not appear after selecting gear in upgrade gear, and fixed an issue where rewards for defeating the boss were not granted in certain side missions during New Game Plus and beyond. And the second hotfix literally just addressed the exploit I mentioned before. That was just a mere 3 days ago, and with how things have been transpiring within the Khazan Discord since, going from daily and transparent conversations with the developers and receiving the details for updates weeks or months in advance, to practically not hearing a word for weeks on end, and then the updates being presented in an entirely different manner and devoid of Sir Junho Lee himself, would heavily suggest we may not be receiving any word from the developers for weeks or possibly even months to come. Who knows at this point, things have taken a turn, and only either significant information or a great deal of time will answer the question for us. I'm obviously hoping they just burnt themselves out a little bit, whilst depleting most of the backup resources and updates they had partially prepared for Khazan's launch. It would make a great deal of sense as to why we received so much additional content, changes, and overall quality of life in such a short amount of time, and it would explain why it has suddenly come to a bit of an abrupt stop. And this has just reminded me of some comments I have received on the past few Khazan videos, where I've discussed this topic before. Those comments mostly state that Khazan is not a live service game, and I think it goes without saying that I'm fully aware of this, nor have I ever said it was. The devs have absolutely treated it as such, however, with the plethora of updates it's received since launch, and no one can dispute that the past 3 or 4 months have felt like a live service experience. Of course, it's not, and the fact we got that experience in the first place has been the cherry on top. But whether live service or not, Neepal's abrupt change in behaviour and all of the facts we have regarding Khazan underachieving as far as Nexon are concerned, and seeing for ourselves that it pales in comparison to some other debut Souls-likes that have released just this year. I'm not saying I expected these updates to continue. A lot of my older videos comment on the fact that we will see an end to this at some point, and all I'm really saying is the past month has neither been a good or bad sign for the future of Khazan. It's remained smack bang in the centre of uncertainty, and as the weeks and now month or so has gone by, we still have nothing pointing us in either direction. Now, is that such a bad thing for a single player game? Yes and no. No, because it launched in a pretty good shape and has gone on to be refined into an excellent single player experience. It's not going anywhere, and it will continue to move forward and attract new players with time. However, yes, it can be seen as bad if we factor in never receiving sequels or even the development studio behind the game possibly no longer existing. It's not to say things could be that bad right now, but we honestly do not know, and stranger things have happened to far more successful development studios, so I'm simply just being realistic. I've watched tons of development studios go under for various reasons over the years, and it would be unwise to not see how Khazan has performed and not at least consider that being a possibility further down the line. We truly do not know, but my entire point is we should not lean too far in either direction until we do at least know more. And rest assured, I'm on the lookout almost daily for any nugget of information that may point us in either of those directions. It should also go without saying that I'm obviously trying to remain optimistic for Khazan, as in a perfect world we would receive DLC and then a future sequel or sequels, as the game itself does hold a very strong position within the Souls-like genre, and it would be such a devastating shame for it to never be fleshed out further. But of course, whatever that future may be, we will just have to wait and see. That is just about as much as I want to drag this video out, folks. I'll be back next week with more Khazan news, whatever that may be. And of course, if we do have anything big in the meantime, then you can expect that video very shortly after whatever development that may be. But of course, that would be it for this video, folks. I do have a range of guides and news videos on the channel already, so do feel free to stop on by and check things out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, folks. And until next time, peace.